Welcome back to Curious Now from the Center for Medical Simulation. I'm Jenny Rudolph, an organizational behavior scholar. This week, interested in everything that knocks us off our A game when we are trying to be good situational leaders. That means adapting to the moment and bringing our best self to it. So imagine 7:30 p.m. after a long hard day of cross-country skiing. Okay, not a very hardship posting. I'm in the kitchen with my beloved brother-in-law, Todd. We're making salad for dinner, and I'm chopping the salad or cleaning the salad, something, somehow. And Todd offers a suggestion, perhaps correction or warning about something I'm doing. And before any filter can jump into place, I snipe back at him, like basically tell him to stay in his lane. And I've identified this attack bird of mine as a magpie. Like a number of my colleagues, friends, and family members, I'm sure, have encountered this character who can slip out before any filters that I have can be slipped into place and back them off of things that I somehow feel attacked about. So that gentle correction or that gentle warning, and the thing I know about Todd is he's always seeing around every corner in terms of how things are going to play out, even something as simple as making salad in the kitchen. So he's almost always right. And I also believe his heart is in the right place, but that doesn't matter when I'm triggered. So today we're going to be talking about small little glitches like the one I discussed, or perhaps more significant ones, and how they can knock you off your game when you least expect it. I'm going to refer back to the work of Deb Dana, who's a licensed clinical social worker, who works in the space of psychotherapy, linking to trauma-informed work, but doing other things as well. And she builds on the work of Stephen Porges in an area called polyvagal theory, which has to do with what are the things that make us feel safe and social and connected, versus what are the things that trigger us to feel like fighting, like taking flight, or like freezing. And today we're going to be focusing more on those things that are sometimes associated with our sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, freeze, and what are those glitches. So for me, I've noticed over and over again that people saying things that impugn my competence do not land well. And I'm sure could do a little more work as to why I am so incredibly defensive about these things. But my brother-in-law, Todd, correcting how I made salad fit into that. And another recent example, I was starting a course, one of our healthcare simulation essentials courses, a few weeks ago. And in that course, we invite people to have a project that they work on throughout the course. And we have two amazing new interns working with us, Zyra and Sienna, and they were taking the course. And I was discussing with one of my colleagues, Grace, should they or should they not have a project in the course? And, we were under time pressure that morning to get things started. And my view is if you're not working on a project in the course, it's just not going to be as valuable for you. And you can hear in my tone of voice, like my view is the right view. And Grace, who's an incredibly thoughtful person and thinks about the level of educational demand that different things put on people, said to me, well, Jenny, I told those interns they didn't need to have a project for the course. And I said, well, of course they have to have a project for the course, and I'll take care of it. I'll work with them. I'll meet with them before the course day starts. And again, that tone of voice, and I'm sure Grace was dealing with this, not this face, but a very different face. And she kind of pushed back gently and wisely and raised her different concerns. And then I just said, look, just trust me. This is going to be better. If they do the project, I'll take the burden of getting them oriented. Okay. And once again, Grace pushed back a little bit. And I just said, can you just trust me? I know how to do this. And I looked up around the table of our morning huddle, and my colleague Roxanne Gardner was sitting there. And I think my colleague Brad Morrison was sitting there, both of them in a little bit of stunned silence, because it's not common for me to feel triggered and act that way. And later in the day, Roxanne came up to me and she said, hey, Jenny, just, checking in. Are you a little bit stressed about your daughter's upcoming wedding? And I don't know, I think she mentioned something else that might be a stressor in my life that I had not been thinking about that morning. And, I'm sure she was probably right that was contributing. So one of the things that Deb Dana helps us understand when we are confronting glitches that trigger us is we may have things going on inside us, such as hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or perhaps, weeks of planning for your daughter's wedding coming up in a few days. She also talks about things outside us that can be stressors, time pressure, in this case, one of a significant stressor for me, loud noises, people who make you feel threatened because of their size or their demeanor or something like that, scary situations, earthquakes, landslides, loud noises, shooting. All of these things can trigger internal sympathetic nervous system responses. But the third thing she talks about is the in-between space, and that is how I interact with the other humans and myself. And I think the thing that happened with me on that morning when I was being so snarky about our interns having a project was my interpretation of Grace's well-meaning and well-thought-out objections was she wasn't trusting my competence. Why is this important? I want to be a skillful, collaborative colleague in as many situations as I can. I also want to lead effectively. And if I think helping the interns have a project for our course is a good idea, there's lots of ways for me to get there besides browbeating Grace Eng. So that's what we're focusing on this week, which is just becoming a little more aware of those things that may be a glitch, a person, place, thing, or event that triggers you. And the reason for this focus is it's part of the emotional intelligence series that we're thinking about right now. And self-awareness is one of the foundational emotional awareness domain. So me being aware of what are those things that can trigger me. And now we have two examples, and I'm sure I can come up with more, that questioning my competence is an identity threat for me in some way and causes me to do a thing I have come to call an identity snarl, which is kind of like, back off. Other things that can serve as glitches that may trigger us that are also even more poignant have to do with belonging. Brené Brown's work on shame and belonging is extremely deservedly well known and cited. But one of the things she noted is that when she looked at middle schoolers, so, 6th, 7th, 8th graders, one of the things that's incredibly important at that age, developmentally, psychologically, developmentally, is a feeling of belonging and feeling like I am a person who can be in this group. I am accepted. We think about that as a process at that age where people are learning the social conventions and norms and try to conform to them so that they can belong. And what Brene Brown found is that it's excruciatingly painful when you are trying to belong and you notice that you are not fitting in. And work around hers has used the language of I'm auditioning to fit in, which is really, really different from like, oh, wow, I walk up to this group of people and I just feel like they're my peeps, they're my posse, I belong here. And building on that work, Naomi Eisenberger has taken a look at what she calls social pain. And that is when we feel excluded, it registers in our brain in a very similar way to other physical pain circuits. Feeling socially excluded is something that can trigger a feeling of shame. And that is this idea that I am wrong, there's something wrong with me, versus the feeling of guilt, which is I have done something wrong and I can repair it. So I've heard the saying, guilt wants to confess and shame wants to hide. So if something happens externally that's a glitch that makes you feel ashamed, that can really flood your whole emotional system. You want to retreat. You want to be hidden. You do not want to be seen. And that can really knock you off your game. So this episode has focused on a specific part of self-awareness, which is what are those people, places, things, events outside us or inside us that might trigger us? And the idea that if we can spend some time getting to know what those are, they may blindside us less. When they come up, we might have ways of self-soothing such that we can stay connected to the other people and such that we can still play our A game instead of like the two examples I gave for myself, my C, D, or F game. And so this is a practice to give us more choice, more flexibility, more agility in moments of stress. So the workout of the week is to catch your glitches when they drive by. Or perhaps they're not going to drive by, they're going to actually hit you. But what are those people, places, things, events, things inside you, interpersonal interactions that trigger you? I gave the example of a constant or frequent trigger for me is feeling like my competence is being challenged. You might have very different triggers. So once again, our workout of the week is catch your own glitches when they drive by or hit you so that you can know what are those things that might trigger you. This has been the podcast Curious Now, produced in Boston by James Lipshaw. And if you've enjoyed this work, you might enjoy our Simulation Leadership Intensive coming up in April 2027. Or you might enjoy working with me in our personal leadership coaching service.